have a buyer who doesn't want to put any money down or spend anything to get into a house. And that it can be done. Hey guys, Sherri here. I am with someone new today. I have a new lender friend. This is Jerod Rosenbarker, and he's with Guarantee Mortgage, right?
Guarantee Mortgage, right?
Guarantee Mortgage. So we're here today to talk about some top problems that VA buyers don't even know that they have. These are kind of things you need to watch out for if you're considering buying a home and using a VA loan. So we'll kind of go through all these things, and if you have questions, put them in the comments, and we'll be glad to address them for you. One of the kind of first things, and this is something that comes up from time to time. I'll have a buyer who doesn't want to put any money down or spend anything to get into a house. And that it can be done. Yeah. There are tricks that we can use to negotiate in some closing costs, and sometimes your lender will chip in a fee, or your realtor will chip in and help you out with some of those things. But having someone who knows how to get those closing costs not really rolled into your loan, but arranged in the contract so that they can be paid for, right?
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
What are some of the kind of things that on the lending side, charges that would come up for somebody who's getting a VA loan?
So charges that would come up could be your appraisal cost doesn't normally have to be paid at closing. Your title policy is normally a big one. Kind of today's market, it's luckily a lot of times the seller will pay it, but we still have the possible fear of having to pay title policy. The survey is another big one. Yeah, survey. Let's see what else. Your credit report fees, just the big ones, really.
Yeah, the appraisal's a big one, and earnest money, that's something that you put in. Even if all your expenses are covered, you're still going to need to put some earnest money down.
That's right.
That's kind of your skin in the game money. It's a deposit that you put down to show the seller that you're really serious about buying their place.
Yeah.
And that is held at the title company, and it does count back towards your closing costs at closing. And if you get them all covered in the contract, then you may actually get some money back at closing.
That's right.
The option fee is another thing. If you want to hold the property off market for a week or so to get your inspections done and try to negotiate any repairs, there's a small fee called an option fee, and that is another piece of cash that you'll have to put down at the beginning, but that's not necessarily a closing cost. Those are things that you could get back if we can negotiate it out appropriately.
That's right.
So you can do it with little to no money down.
Absolutely.
Little to no. There's still a little bit that you're going to have to come out. And even once the closing is done, then there's moving costs that are involved. So
yeah, that's a big one. A lot of people don't keep in mind is, even if you're only moving 30 minutes, it's still going to cost for transportation, move all your stuff. U-Haul, if you do it yourself, you still got to calculate those. So it's not going to be, even if we negotiate it to zero, you're still going to incur some kind of cost.
Yeah, pizza and beer for your friends.
That's right.
Yeah. So that kind of ties up those expenses for the most part.
Absolutely.
Choosing the wrong lender, that's a big one. There are a lot of lenders who really don't do much at all with VA loans.
That's right.
And so you really want to get someone who is versed in these things. And what are some things that a lender who's not VA savvy, what are some kind of mistakes that they could make that could really cost our VA buyers a lot of money or a deal?
So a few is, let's say you already have, and this we'll go over this a little bit later, but and it's kind of like a little bit of a myth too, but one thing is you may talk to a lender and they say you've already used basically your VA, what do you call it? Entitlement. And that's not necessarily true. A lot of times if you're moving somewhere, you can have a second VA loan. So it has to be your primary. That's a big thing we have to talk about.
Your primary residence, like where you live.
Right. So if you talk to a lender and they tell you can't, it's a big red flag. They probably don't work with a lot of VA buyers. Another one is...
We've heard of a lender who told someone that they could only use their entitlement one time ever, and that is way wrong.
That's right.
Way wrong.
And then another thing is if you have a lender that tells you that they can do a VA loan, but they don't know your situation, like they haven't pulled your COE, another thing we'll go to later, then I don't know, like they have to pull the COE. That's the only way we can guarantee it from the VA that we can guarantee your loan.
And the COE is the certificate of eligibility,
correct,
right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And then let's see, delayed closing, those would be because of that. Oh, miscalculating the funding fee. So people, a lot of these things are kind of automated by the VA, and they'll give us the numbers. But if somebody hasn't worked with them a lot in the past and they're kind of new to it, when they go to actually do a VA loan, they can misquote your funding fee. If they misquote your funding fee and you go to close, you could potentially have to pay more money down than you thought. So also including a funding fee when maybe you don't need one. A lot of people don't know this, but if you're a veteran and you're even 10% disabled, you are exempt from a funding fee from the VA.
If you're 1%, you're exempt.
Right.
Just any disability at all. So if your lender doesn't know that and doesn't bring it up, then they're going to charge you a big fee that's a couple percent
Right.
of the sales price rather than exempting you from that. So,
100%.
and then giving kind of poor advice. If they're just not familiar with it, with all the ins and outs, and they don't have experience with a bunch of different deals and all the things that can happen, they're not going to give you the advice that someone who's versed in VA loans would give you.
100%.
Yeah. Not understanding the VA appraisal process is another one.
Right.
An appraisal is not just a formality, and they're done a little bit differently for VA loans and for FHA loans.
Right.
For the government-backed loans. So there are some kind of main things that they cover.
Absolutely. So they're going to go kind of more in depth on the structural soundness as well as the living condition. A typical appraisal, they're going to go out there and they're going to look at structural soundness, make sure it's got flooring and everything, but they're not going to do an in-depth check, whereas the VA appraisal will. So it's just them guaranteeing the house for the veteran, basically.
Yeah, it's got to be safe, it's got to be clean, and it's got to have structural soundness. So like the roof has to be good, the foundation has to be good. Sewer situation, and if there's a septic, that needs to be pumped out within the last 3 years. Windows have to be good. It doesn't require that it has to be an air conditioner, but if there is one, it has to be operating properly. Things like that. Safety, sanitation, and structural soundness are things that the appraiser looks for in addition to what your normal inspectors are going to look at. So they're going to be, an appraiser can halt a deal until these things are fixed.
Absolutely. Actually, they will halt the deal if it's not fixed.
Yeah.
Another thing about the VA appraisals too is, we told you earlier that's going to be part of your closing cost. The VA pays for the appraisal up front. So they're one of the, like if it's a VA appraisal, they're one of the few that don't require payment until closing. However, if the deal is a bust for whatever reason, that appraisal still has to be paid for by you. So even though they kind of do the work on the front hand, they still want it paid. So I think that's a big one that we've kind of run into a couple times.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So learn something new every day.
That's right.
Chipped paint is something else that they look for. That's not something that's always at the top of mind, but I think that's probably for the lead-based paint, if it's an older house especially.
Yeah.
Not working utilities, lack of smoke detectors, and carbon monoxide detectors as well. Okay, so things that appraisers look at, and that's kind of a quick and dirty, but that basically covers what they do. They look at extra things, and we know that we have to have an appraisal if you have a loan, and that they can halt a deal until some things are fixed.
Yes.
And getting those things fixed is a negotiation between your agent and the seller's agent.
So you got to get someone good.
Somebody who knows, somebody who knows how to, has experience with VA loans. I'm doing a transaction right now with someone that this is her very first VA loan, so it's an opportunity that I can share my experience with her and kind of teach her about how these things go and how that's helping her in negotiation with them and helping them understand my veteran's position. So it's good. Good to have someone with experience.
That's right.
There are some cases that some types of houses that a VA loan can't cover. It has to be your primary residence.
100%. Primary residence. So, like we said earlier, you can use a second VA loan, but it's got to be your primary. So you're moving from some place to another. I don't remember the exact details, but it's normally 12 to 24 months. Their initial VA loan has to be in existence before you can get a new one.
So if you're here working, you're stationed here, and then you get PCS someplace else.
Right.
When you get PCS, you can use as long as you have enough entitlement left, you can get a second VA loan.
That's right. Going back to a good lender.
Things that it's not, you can't use it for. You want to go over that?
Oh yeah, you can't do a fix and flip. You can't necessarily do it like a rental house, a house you want to buy and then rent out. There's ways I don't want to say there's ways you can do that, but it's a lot longer process.
You have to live in it first.
Right, you have to live in the home first. You got to make sure it's your primary residence. You got to live in it for at least a year. Make sure everything is kind of going smooth. What else do we have? Investment properties, went over that. Oh, a lot of times people think they can get raw land, and there are certain ways we can and can't do that. So you can't just buy straight up raw land with a VA loan. That's going to be basically a land loan. So
That's the Texas Veteran Land Board loan.
right.
With that, you can buy the land. The only way you can do it on a VA loan is a construction loan, and
Right.
I don't think we really do those too much here in Texas.
We don't do them too
It's
much
really
here in
complicated.
Texas. There's a lot more steps to it. Sherri was actually mentioning to me like the easiest way to do it would be to find a builder that either will buy the land or already has the land that you want to build on, and then build it, and then we'll just make one loan at the end of it, VA loan for all of it.
Yeah, so you close when it's all done and ready to move into,
Correct.
rather than having to do draws on that construction all the time. I've got one of those going right now too. So we're waiting. We're in the planning stage. We're doing edits to the floor plan, and 6 or 8 months from now, we'll be going to a closing, and they'll be ready to move in.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so the certificate of eligibility. This shows your entitlement and your eligibility for the VA loan.
Right.
I think there are a couple of different. I mean, you have to have honorable discharge, right? And
Honorable discharge.
so many years of service, and your DD 214, all those things that you're used to showing everywhere you go.
Yeah.
But you want to talk some more about what you do with the COA?
Yeah, COE. So I'll give you a little bit kind of a rundown. So if you're active, I'll put it that way, for at least I think it's 2 years and you're honorably discharged, a lot of times you are eligible, but it's always a good thing to pull it first, because there's certain requirements that they want you to meet. And if you're a reservist, whether it's National Guard, Reserve, or some other kind of reservist, you have to be in a minimum of 6 years, but there are some little windows in there. So like if you want to Google it, it'll tell you, 30 days of Title 10 orders or 90. Those are kind of hard. This is why the COE comes in, because they will have all of that in there for you. You don't necessarily have to look at the DD 214. We still will need it, but with the COE, it'll tell you if you are eligible, and then the reasons why you are and are not. Another thing about the COE, and I'm sorry for kind of taking this on,
totally fine.
is it will have on there whether your funding fee is exempt or not. If your funding fee is exempt, that's good. That means that X amount of percent on whatever home you want to do, you don't have to pay. It won't be rolled into the loan. And it'll also have your disability on there. So a lot of veterans don't factor in their disability, which could help them improve their odds of getting into a home. We can use that number as income for proof, and with proof, I should say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so the very first step, with non-veteran buyers, we say our first step is to get pre-approved. Mm-hmm. But with a veteran, it's going to be to get your COE pulled up front.
That's right.
That's going to let you know which direction you have to go, and if you're eligible for a VA, and if that's what you're going to use, or if you're going to re-strategize and use something different.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with how to pull it, talk to a lender such as myself who works with them, and we can pull it for you. It's not a big hassle, and we can also guide you if you want to do it your own.
Yeah. So another kind of mistake people do is using a realtor who's not familiar with VA loans as well, and VA appraisers, and the kind of houses that you need to get for VA loans. Looking at houses with bad roofs and other kinds of problems. Those are not necessarily going to pass for an FHA loan or a VA loan. So you want to get somebody who's experienced to know what kind of property to look for, so you don't waste a bunch of time going to a property that you can't get a loan for. Mm-hmm. And you want someone who's familiar with negotiating in those closing costs for you into your loan, especially with difficult sellers, and trying to, presenting it so that it makes sense to them and that it's acceptable to them.
Yeah, a lot of, while you're flipping through, a lot of people in Texas right now, like seller side, think that a VA loan is this long, awful, hard process, and it's really not.
Yeah.
It's much easier than FHA, and it's about as easy as a conventional. So finding somebody like Sherri who can actually talk to these realtors and know, like, hey, it's not as hard as you think, and it's actually not even more of a timely process. You just don't know enough yet.
And in my arena and experience, I hear a lot that people have this perception that the VA loan is for people who have no money and it's just going to be really difficult. It's not that. This is a benefit that you've earned with your service,
That's right.
and that zero funding fee is something that you've earned with the disability that you have. It's not going to cause a bad mark on you or make you look bad in any way. This is a good thing. It's a reward for you.
That's right.
The VA tries to get you better rates and better terms. So it's definitely something that you should be using to help you to buy your house. If the appraisal comes in low, that's another thing. We have a chance to go ahead and protest that low value by the Tidewater. Experienced realtor is going to know what to expect on the VA appraisal. That's stuff that we talked about before with the minimum property requirements,
That's right.
the safety, security, and sanitary. And if the appraisal comes in too low, you want somebody who's got experience with trying to protest those and get who wins.
Yeah.
I've only done 5 of those. I've only had to do 5 of those in my career, but I've won on 3 of them. So presenting that evidence on what that house is worth to try to get that appraisal up to the contracted amount, you want somebody who's got experience with that as well.
Absolutely.
And then the difference between entitlement and the remaining eligibility, that's something to understand too. The more entitlement you have, the better the terms that you get are.
That's right.
So, yeah, and the final, well, not the final, the second to final thing, we have a list here that we're going by, obviously.
Yeah.
Believing that the VA loan can only be used once. We talked about that a little bit at the beginning.
Right.
You can use it over and over and over again, especially if you're, buying and selling, or buying and then you refinance one to free up some of your entitlement to use on another one.
That's right.
Like you've been buying little houses all along as you're moving around, and then you get to the end and you want to buy your final be-all dream house, then you can refinance those other ones and put all your entitlement into this one big house, right?
That's right.
And another another mistake that people make is failing to budget for property tax and insurance. If you do have 100% disability, obviously you have no property taxes,
That's right.
but you still do have to pay for insurance on the home just in case something happens.
That's right.
If your disability is not 100%, then you'll have some discount on your property taxes, but not total.
That's right.
And if you don't have any disability, you'll be just like us,
It's like-
right? So there's a lot of different ways things can go south, and a lot of misconceptions about VA loans that people have. And that's what we're trying to do, is educate people on using this benefit that you've earned with your blood, sweat, and tears.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.